Votes next Yeah, I just don't want to do yeah, so somewhere.
Jesus, what I'd say, it might be the same.
I wonder. Yeah, like it's going to a store and like,
Oh, this is better.
no, I play private tutor.
So you go and visit them?
I mean, I oh, she is good. I thought you were what happened to that piano that you smoked for
I haven't talked to her.
Yeah, I saw her.
We'll cover that. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm telling everybody I
Yeah, please do. Right.
will just take it off after a while.
Yeah, I know. I know.
You don't expect it to happen. You're right.
See my new pointer?
Need a pointer? No, thank you. Wow, it's a green one. Yeah. Because I live right out here in my house. Yeah. But no, in fact, I don't think she still works.
Yeah. I know you do. I said, yeah, she was glad that she made someone that was coming in that she stays with her. What do you rather do that? They go to church on Sunday. They I can go to mass on Saturday night. Well, I do the choir all three masses. Oh, yeah. It doesn't matter if I'm she had a newspaper, so you know, he never got off. I said, she said, he called up across to the bathroom. I said, okay.
All right, we'll get started now. Good time. It's 6 after, and the only reason that I'm starting and interrupting your wonderful conversations is because we're streaming this one live on the internet. And so I let everyone know at 11 it would be streaming on the internet. And if you don't believe me, you can go out and there's a TV in the lobby, and it's already on the TV in the lobby. And so any of our volunteers or even staff members who might be interested in this presentation, they can be watching it right now. Maybe they're watching upstairs at their desk. And it also, yeah, you should wave. And then it also records. And so for anyone that can't live stream it, they can always go back. Even you can go back and watch it again if you want. This is a pretty good presentation, I think. The subject matter is good. It is a response to our prior meeting from March. You might recall if how many attended the March meeting? So about 80–90% of you. So that was more of a downer meeting, you know. We did lose our leader, and we had to convey that information, communicate it. You know, we're trying to communicate better. And we also had to come up with sort of rebound from having lost our leader. And so we had some good ideas at that meeting. Can anyone remind me what some of the good ideas were? More communication.
Number one.
Very good. So that was a great idea. That then I went to my next leadership meeting, and you know they said again, we need to communicate more. We need to communicate more. We need to. And I sit there and I listen to everybody, and I was very patient. I waited maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes to say anything, but then I said, you know, you say we need more communication, but how are we going to do it? What's the plan? What's the plan, Stan? And then we're coming up with better plans so that we can move and act on these ideas. One of the ways I'm trying to improve communication in the agency, you know I'm a techie guy, and so I'm trying to boost email use. And for everyone who has a little tablet, like this is my little tablet, my cell phone, and all of our staff members have one of these. Theirs is bigger, and it has email on it. So I'm trying to educate the staff on how to use email, how to better communicate technologically, because that's what I know. I'm streaming the web presentation because that's what I know how to do. And so the message from leadership is we have communication as one of the things that we need to do better and improve on. I'm doing my job with what I know. And so everybody else has to do their job and be accountable and communicate better with how they know how to communicate, whether that's phone or face-to-face or however. I don't know. However you think communication is good, you should just do that a little bit better. And that goes for, of course, the volunteers with me, the volunteers with patients, the volunteers with other volunteers, and the volunteers with staff, staff to staff, staff to family, staff to patient, staff to doctor, patient, all of these nodes on the network of communication need to get better. So it's not just that we're going to be emailing more, but we're going to be maybe phone calls more, mailing more, and also having group meetings. The frequency of the group meetings has already increased. We had one last month, we had one this month. I'm going to plan one for next month, hopefully. The subject matter, if we don't get to it, I'll let you know, is we're going to talk about special teams of the volunteers. One of the special teams would be a bedside vigil team. And so once we iron out the process and who's on that special team, we'll have a meeting next month to share who's on that team, what's the process, and what do they do. What does a bedside vigil mean, and how does it all work? Who calls who, and who goes where? So I'd like to share that with you all next month, the special teams. Another potential special team would be something like pet therapy. We don't have anyone on that team now, so we have to set it up and get ready and present it in May. Then after May, June, we'll probably have the volunteer dinner, gala, awards, recognition, The first official dinner lunch was a lunch. We had, that was not the official volunteer recognition event. So that will be, because I was planning that. You don't want me to plan the official one. We're going to have, Florence will be back by that time. She can help us plan for that. Okay? So another idea that was brought up at the last meeting was brought up by our CFO, Max. Does anyone remember what Max said when he stood up? He seemed to be boiling with a good idea, and he finally got an opportunity, and he stood up, and what did he say to us? Does anyone remember? He has an accent, so maybe you didn't hear him. You remember what Max brought to the group? We need to spread the word. That's exactly right. Max said, volunteers are probably the best people to spread the word. And another good group that could spread the word of hospice would be what I call products of the program, are those families who have lost a loved one on our service. They could say, I had great service. If that scenario were to play out in your life, you should probably seek the same service out. So you're exactly right, Betsy, that the volunteers need to spread the word. And another concept that was brought up at the meeting by Max, our CFO, was that spreading the word increases our referrals. And we need to increase our referrals because, as many of you know, going to the hospice home, not yesterday or the day before, but last week, we had one patient. And to do very well there financially, we need to have at least 8. And there are 12 rooms, we should have 12, right? So what spreading the word does is it increases our referrals. And that's why I've titled this presentation, How Volunteers Can Help Improve the Bottom Line, because if you spread the word enough, the referrals will go up and we'll have more, basically, revenue to operate. If we don't have enough patients, we cannot operate. And we haven't reached critical mass level yet, but if the trend goes down, one patient turns to 0, and you can't have a healthcare agency with 0 patients. That's just not, it'd be like a McDonald's with no cheeseburgers. It just wouldn't work. So we need to spread the word, increase referrals. Referrals will then generate revenue, obviously, to keep the operations going. And as you know, we're a nonprofit, so increasing referrals is not going to get us more money. It's just going to keep our mission moving forward. We need to sustain our mission and vision. We obviously need to keep the hospice home open. And so spreading the word, increasing referrals will then help our bottom line. So that's the theme of this presentation. And I have a new pointer too. Look at that, just for the click. Oh, I love it. And it has a fancy green thing too. It's green, not red. I love green. Yeah. There are 3 ways that came to my mind, first of all, and I think it fits, to improve the bottom line through referrals. There are word-of-mouth referrals. This is the most common. If I tell you that hospice is great, you may tell a friend, and that's sort of a snowball effect of friend-to-friend, word-of-mouth referrals. It's very common. A second that's probably less thought of, instead of just telling someone how great hospice is, sometimes we have to negate some myths. You know, you probably have heard responses from people in the community when you tell them about hospice and they say, I don't want hospice, that's a death sentence or something. They just throw back a completely opposite thing than you know the philosophy is. And it's like, okay, what do I do now? I personally gave a public discussion on Tuesday at Blue Water Lodge, and I had 13 seniors, and one of the questions that I received was regard to length of stay. There was an experience where one of the residents' husbands had been on hospice for a day, and that is, you know, 1 day and then passed away. And so that's an experience where the hospice perception is, you come in and my loved one is deceased in 1 day. That's what you are. You know, and I have to respond with what we really are. We are to improve the life for the last 6 months, ideally. Sometimes even longer, but ideally 6 months. And so sometimes you have to negate the myths and overcome fear and discomfort about hospice philosophy. And the third thing, which ties into what I did on Tuesday, was community education. So we'll talk more about maybe who has the most fear and discomfort, who you can connect to the most through community education, and who you can reach out to through word-of-mouth referrals. So I have open clip art, gives us these free images. You know, when I stream something on the web, I can't play any music because it's copyrighted, because when it posts to the web, if I have copyrighted music, the police will probably come and take me away, and that'll be the end of that. So you can get these open clip art images, and I can use these with no copyright license. So I have Dolly the doctor, Jack the gentleman, and Joy the volunteer. Jack's mostly in reference to a patient, a potential patient, or a family member of a patient. Dolly the doctor is a physician, and Joy the volunteer, because you all bring joy to the lives of our patients and families. Okay, the first way that we can improve and increase referrals to help the bottom line is word of mouth. How many people here already do word of mouth referrals? Exactly. So how effective is this presentation going to be if I just talk to you for 60 minutes about something you already do? Not that effective. But I have 2 slides to help you with your word of mouth referrals. And I also have a form, which I put onto your tables, of a diary that hopefully we're going to record these. Because one of the things that came up at the meeting was, you know, I do scientific studies in my spare time. And scientific studies are much different than journalism in the way that we produce results and data and findings. In other words, measurements. So you can all do referrals, and I believe you. Trust me, you are a very honest group, and I know you all do referrals. But how are we really going to measure that and know if it's working or not? One of the other ideas to increase referrals is to put up a billboard, right? It's very common. We need to advertise. Nobody knows about us. You think word of mouth referrals can do it? No, you need to throw up a billboard, and that way everybody knows about the agency. Well, that's a great idea. That's all it is an idea until you put up a billboard, and then you measure the expense, and then you measure how many people actually come to the agency because they saw the billboard. So it's a great idea if all of a sudden we get a couple hundred referrals, and then you say, oh, the billboard worked. But if you put up a billboard for any any business, doesn't have to be us. You put up a McDonald's billboard, and then you start asking your customers while they're chewing their cheeseburgers, how'd you hear about us? And nobody says billboard. Well, it's time to take the billboard down. So we need to move from these great ideas to a measured action. So you all do wonderful word of mouth advertising for us already, and now we have to figure out a way to measure it. I'm going to record your word of mouth connections on these diaries. You're going to turn them in, and then I'm going to see if they raise the bottom line. Okay, and that's my job. I'm good with the numbers and the measurements. So I have a couple pretty graphs to show you about why we need to increase the word of mouth referrals. And this is in your handout, although something the CFO told me lately is I'm printing a few too many color copies. So I've cut down my color copies.
Do you have any more?
Nope, that's I've also cut down my copies overall. So got to share. Yeah, I made 12 copies and they're all black and white. That's another reason I promote email so much, is it's free. The figure I was given, 7 cents per color copy and less than 1 cent for black and white. So it adds up. I'm doing my part. I was the worst culprit. So let me explain this chart to you. Kind of want to focus it a little bit better, but if you have it at your desk, I can show you what the colors mean. This big thing right here, these are our referrals from facilities, okay? Nursing home, that's a facility, right? Blue Water Lodge, that's a type of a facility. Assisted living, adult foster care, these are facilities. So these are all of our referrals, I think since we started in October with this new system. All of our referrals, looks like about 658 referrals came from nursing facilities. This line is physicians. It looks like about 247 referrals came from physicians. And this is other, okay? So you're not a facility and you're not a physician that I know of. Maybe some of you are, didn't tell me. Those of you driving Mercedes here. So this is, again, our facility referral streams and count. And this is our physician referrals. And this is other. So where do we need to improve on? Other. And who's other? Us, right. So this is one of the ways that we can measure this. If other goes up because of this meeting in a couple months, we'll know that that was effective. You know, if we start promoting it through word of mouth and recording it, and I, take it to the leadership and the board, and I say volunteers have doubled their word of mouth. Let's see if this thing goes up. If it goes up, then it's working, and if it doesn't, it's not. And you can all tape your mouth shut, and we'll put up a billboard and see if that works. No, don't tape your mouth shut. I'll still have plenty of pizza party. Don't worry about that. Now, I'd also like to point out the colors. Okay, blue is home health, orange is hospice, and green is private duty special care services, which I think we call our non-health in-home care. I think that's what they call it. So you can see the ratio of even more important for hospice. Okay, this is a lot of hospice referrals from nursing facilities. Makes sense. Patients at a nursing home, they need hospice. Nursing home calls us, we go in. This is physician. Makes sense. Patient goes to their doctor. Doctor says, you know what, I think it's that time. Let's talk about hospice. And so the doctor makes a referral. But again, for other, which is your word of mouth category, we have a lot of other referrals for private duty special care in home, visiting nurse or aides, the non-health services. We have some for home health, and the lowest proportion or ratio is our hospice word of mouth referrals. And I actually like to see this in the way that I always like to start with attacking what needs to be done the most. And so we have a great baseline to really improve on. In other words, let me give you a little short story. I took a guitar class in college, and I already knew how to play the guitar, but I pretended like I didn't. And so from the time that I started the class till when I finished, I had shown such great improvement. I got my A. So what we have here is very few hospice word-of-mouth referrals for our benchmark baseline. And then we're going to do our thing, and then, you know, in a month or two, this thing is going to go, whoop, I know it is. And we're all going to be heroes. And then we'll probably get even ice cream with our pizza. So it's even more important for hospice, as the previous slide indicated, but to get even more refined with the data. That last one was hospice altogether. This is hospice home, okay? This is the proportion of referrals from our three sources from the previous slide, and this is hospice home. Nursing facilities to hospice home, doctors to hospice home, and look at this other category, which is our word-of-mouth referrals. So if this was 100 patients at our hospice home, and you asked them all, how'd you hear about the hospice home? What got you here? 75 to 80% would say the nursing home told them. About 20, 25% would say the doctor told them. It's very small would say, oh, my friend told me about the hospice home, and that's why I'm here. So you can see that the hospice home is in the most need. I almost pointed at you with the green thing to say.
Would hospitals be in others or no? A lot of times when you're checking out a hospital and looking for a hospital, the hospital will
Okay, is hospital in physician or facility? That I don't know. I don't know based on this.
I know the police were hospice only.
Do you know if there was a...
No idea. Hospice is there, and to the hospital
I don't really know what that would be. Obviously, if there's a doctor there, who told them it would be doctor, but I don't really know. The first thing that comes to mind is maybe a hospital is an inpatient facility in these numbers. What do you think, Laura?
I would bet that hospitals are in the nursing facilities because the hospitals are primary source. I had the impression that we were able to check you on
The social worker comes in and talks to you.
Sometimes the hospitals have their own hospice too. Yes.
Yeah, the place I used to work. That was us. But it does. I tell you what, it doesn't guarantee anything. Oh, that was.
River District has a hospice. We don't really fund the River District. They do it for hospice.
No, one question. My brother was in a nursing home, and I asked about hospice. This was a few years back. They would give us some names, but they would recommend them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there again, they just have a name in the head. They told us about 3 different hospice groups. They wouldn't tell us one.
Yeah, and they're definitely not supposed to.
Right.
I mean, they can tell you what they want to tell you, but.
Yeah. I mean, the hospice home's a little different situation.
But Betsy also brings up a good point. Even if it is from the hospital, maybe the hospital is a secondhand referral through a word-of-mouth referral, because the patient actually has the power to make the decision and the family. So if the doctor at the hospital says maybe it's time for hospice, and the patient or family member stands up and says, BJ just told me about visiting nurse in Blue Water Hospice, And that's, you know, I don't know how it's going to pan out in the numbers, but the truth of the matter would be that would be a word of mouth referral.
The fact that it hasn't been open that long, there are so many people in the area that don't even know it exists.
Mhm.
So, you know, that's where we can at least let them know that there is such a place. But I would think most of the time, if somebody came into the hospice home and they were asked, you know, where did you hear about it? They would more than likely, in order to get there, they had to go through their doctor. So a lot of them might not even say, well, a volunteer mentioned it. You know, they might just say, well, my doctor sent me here.
Yep, and I think we might also be improving our satisfaction surveys, because this data comes out of our clinical back end. So the numbers might be kind of slanted to the actual clinical referral stream, but we might improve our satisfaction surveys, which are a little bit more softer questions that could just be like, how did you hear of it? We might, you know, kind of boost those types of surveys. I hope we do, because that's kind of my thing that I like. But hold on, Nancy.
I've been gone for a few weeks, as you know, but I know before it seemed like every other day. I know it wasn't that much, but Marlette had something in the Times Herald, what they did, or you know what was going on, and I really don't see much. I mean, outside of when they first opened up the hospice home, and also on the radio stations, they have people coming in and talking about different things.
Yeah, so
and I think that would be, you know.
Yeah,
and
so
on their TV station.
So newspaper and TV and radio. This is media. So to look at these, that's a great point, Nancy. So what we have here is this very small other category, and your media would all fall in here as well. So that's something that Laura coming back now is going to really help us improve on. I can't say right now that I'm going to put in a newspaper article about whatever service line. I will tell you, though, that one of my objectives of May, and this kind of actually goes together with our special teams, is, okay, we're going to launch the bedside vigil, or relaunch the bedside vigil. Okay, we're going to launch a photography thing with Moranis. I'm going to try to get the pet therapy. And those are news articles that I can put out. Special interest stories about the volunteer program. Now, how they advertise the business itself, now that Laura's back and she's been talking with Brian about these types of things, maybe they will boost that, because you're right. You know, this is not word of mouth referral. This is the whole big ball of wax, and that includes a media thing as well.
Oh, something like an annual open house. One day advertise something to where you get new people who will at least go see it.
So at the leadership meetings recently, a very similar idea was tossed out, that sounds negative, brought up, that we're about at our 1-year anniversary, and maybe we missed it already, but some smart guy or girl, I think it was Brian, said it's about time to have a big 1-year anniversary thing. And he might have brought that to Laura recently, and I bet that will probably move forward, because I think that's a good idea that nobody can kind of negate. What do you think?
I like the idea of open house, but you also have to stop and consider that there are patients there, and they don't want people walking through, looking at them. They don't want to be disturbed. The family doesn't want their loved ones disturbed. We've got to come up with something to be outdoors, to promote it rather than worry about doing like 12 hours there.
Yeah.
And you can't ship them over today.
Yeah.
That'd be the day that we have 12 people.
Yeah.
We wouldn't need the open house, right?
Yeah.
Just say, hey.
Even if you just put all the patients in one lane and one the other lane open, still the rising confusion there about here. The staff has to look over that. So, you know, there's a lot of things to consider in that aspect.
Yeah, and so that's something that the planning committee is going to have to work through, and maybe it would be in the summer and outside, and maybe we could emphasize the observatory as actually meeting place, you know, that sort of thing. And when the flowers are in bloom, what's that?
We have a lot of ground there.
We sure do. And speaking of ground, literally, something that we're thinking about, I think I mentioned this in a recent mailing, is we're looking at a garden team. That would be one of our special teams. So thinking of literally the ground. If anyone's a gardener and we want to start that program, we could launch that. And then part of the, at my last place, we had the best garden. So if we wanted to kind of launch a garden and have a garden day, we could pitch it as this is our first anniversary, come to our garden, check it out, donate some plants.
You know who else you might contact for something like that to get them involved in? It's always with the community service work. Is the National Gardening Program.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's who did my old garden. It's just ridiculous. It was awesome.
There's a lot of chatter during the hospice run too, because it's right there.
Yeah.
So somehow maybe we could get a little focus during when half of the community is there doing the hospice run. You hear somebody say, "Oh, this is beautiful. I never even knew this was here." You know.
It was the first year we had the run at that spot.
Yep. And yeah, speaking of the run, some of you have already been working on the run with Tricia, and she definitely needs as much help as possible. So we can help her with that sort of thing. So to wrap up the first third is this idea. Remember our buddy Jack, the gentle giant Jack, and Joy, the volunteer. So as a volunteer, you can say to your friend or neighbor, have you heard about hospice? And that's not a potential patient, maybe it's a family member with anyone. You know, hospice is a thing where it's not like selling a new car, it's selling a car that you might not need for 40 years down the road, or your car that you're going to give to your family member. So just to spread the word, again, about hospice, and the forms we'll talk about at the end, that's how we're going to record quantitatively how many times you do this, and the effect we're going to measure. So the second aspect of this presentation is negating the myths and overcoming the fear. I gave you the example that I experienced on Tuesday of the woman whose husband was on hospice for 1 day, and now she thinks that that's what hospice is. Sign on to hospice 1 day, and it's a death sentence. We all know that's not true. So we need to overcome fear. But in planning this presentation, what I found out is it's not just the family members who need to overcome the fear. It's also doctors, group we already talked about. There are some doctors who are still scared of hospice and don't know what it really is. And when I used to teach some of my past volunteers, especially the young ones, I'll say, you know, don't forget, this is no offense to the aging population, but there are some doctors who are practicing now who have been around and graduated med school before hospice was even in America. So they're still learning. It's an ongoing thing, and we just need to continue to spread the word. So not just person to person, but also we can overcome some myths and fear with doctors as well. So I didn't just come up with that. Of course, I had something to back it up. I didn't just think of that. I saw it in the numbers. And here's where I came up with this idea. This is in your handout too. This is a graph of the reasons for non-admission. So every number in here, and it goes up to 34 altogether. These are names of people who we have met and connected and signed up a little medical chart for them, and their name and address and diagnosis, whatever, is in the system, but they weren't admitted. So it's kind of, in my McDonald's analogies, it's somebody walked in the door, looked at the menu, and walked right out. And if you add it all up, you know, with 34 being here, I don't know how many this is altogether, but it's, you can see it's a lot. We need to get rid of these non-admission numbers. You know, there should be 0 non-admissions, really, except for maybe this category. But if somebody comes in our door, hopefully they'll sign on to service. They come in, hey, what are you guys about? Hospice, this is what it is. Okay, sign me up, this sort of thing. So we need to reduce these non-admission numbers. And I put this all up with, again, our same colors. The blue is home health, the orange is hospice, and the green is private duty, special care services. And then this is also divided by facility, other, and physician. And up at the top, these are the reasons for non-admits. So again, the colors here are the same that we've been looking at, and the divisions are the same: nursing facility, other, physicians. But then you've got to look up here at the reasons for non-admission to find out the anomalies and the high points of what we need to reduce the most. So obviously, what stands out, right? Right here, right? So what's the reason for non-admission that's so high? And I look up at the top and it says refused services. So if you want to know what this one is so high and why it's hospice, this is expired. And that makes sense. You know, there are other ways to combat that. Sign them up earlier. That way when they come on, we can have them sign on to service before they pass away. That we could combat that. That's a different group. This is more people refusing service. They come in, we tell them about our service, and then they say no thanks. And like the McDonald's analogy, they walk out the door. And there are a lot of other definitions of what refused service means, but in my mind, that's what that means. And so when I thought about that, when I was making this presentation, what does it mean to refuse service? That's kind of like the lady I talked to on Tuesday, who knows what hospice is, lost a husband on hospice. Now, if it was another family member herself's time to make a decision, do you think she would accept hospice or refuse it? She would probably refuse it. So even if we went out to her and I talked to her, even if I said, hey, this lady, and then go out to her, she'd refuse service, I believe, except for I think I may have changed her mind because we talked at length. But we need to reduce this because 33 plus 26 plus 22, all of a sudden we've got 100 new patients. All of these, you know, these patients we can't reach now. All these patients are probably still out there. And that's over 100 patients that we can almost flip the switch on. What do you think, Laura?
Sorry. This is a great presentation. Jonathan and Martin. The expired patients, I would strongly also that too. The number one thing you hear back from Spain is that they have corrupt here, that they wish they had access to those expired patients. They wait. They probably have 3 months before. Now the team's out of control, the family's out of control, they're tired, and we get a referral moments before people are actually passing away. Those are the people who are educated to get over that fear. Get those referrals sooner and actually have help.
Sometimes, though, that goes back to the doctors, too. They're afraid to give up their patient and refer them to hospice care. Hey, they're in the business to make money, too, so I'm going to keep this dude as long as I can before I give him up. You know, that basically, bottom line, that's the bottom line. But I've heard of that, too. I mean, they're not sick enough yet, and who knows how fast you're going to get sick. We put our mother into hospice, and she was gone within 8 hours. And I mean, we didn't even realize we knew she was sick. We didn't think she was going to die that night. You know, it's one of those things. Nobody knows when their time's up either. I mean, you can push them into as fast as you want, but a lot of times the doctors don't want to give them up yet. They wait and wait and wait.
So I feel like we're in cahoots because that's this. That's the section we're on. This is the next slide. So we all know that choosing hospice is a decision made by two key influences, the patient and their family and the physician. So no matter how many patients and families we talk to in the first section of the presentation, we definitely need to hit up Dolly the doctor more and more because that's exactly right. And that'll not only get the refused service number down, but also the time of admission could be sooner if we talk to the doctors more. So we need to do that. So that's the second column on your forms is how many people will talk to the doctor, and then we're going to record that. So if you talk to your doctors 20 times and those numbers go down, we might measure that effect.
I have a question
Mhm. Yeah, this one right here.
Okay, I know you don't have a good process for years after.
Mhm.
What kind of effect was that for those hospice conversation?
My basic answer is not enough. I see it as completely untapped. Well, I might not say completely, but extremely untapped. I would like to see it improve. It really, I mean, that's where 100% of our satisfaction surveys come from. That's where a ton of our continuing relationships come from. I think it's a key group that we need to connect more with. I totally agree with that. I mean,
You can't bombard people that cost their loved one every week, every month for a year.
true, but I'll tell you what, from my meeting Tuesday, and we are a nonprofit that offers community services that generate no revenue. And the bereavement speaks to the true mission of this agency. So when I was at this talking to these 13 lovely ladies, and especially this one lady, and I knew there were 13 ladies and no guys for a reason. They probably all lost their husbands. That certain lady did. So this is a thing where I believe, this is an area where I believe the mission of the agency can really shine. The more we give, even non-products of our program, just community bereavement groups, if we give more free grief services to these groups, I think it's a win-win-win-win-win for everybody. So it's not necessarily to bombard those who have lost their loved ones on our service, but I just think we need to connect with more bereaved folks. I mean, I think it's just it's a big part of what we do. We offer non-expense free services to the community, and it's just a group we need to.
Okay, on that note, do they still get together once a month for luncheons?
Yeah,
For the widowers?
yeah,
Twice a month.
yeah.
Okay, does that ever put in the daily happenings in the paper?
No, never is.
You don't see it in there?
No, none of that is. That's one of the problems, yeah.
Yeah, you put that, if you want to get in touch with the community.
Yeah.
Not just people that have been serviced by hospice. That's a real good place to put it.
Definitely. Yeah.
Even on the radio. Yeah.
What do you think, Julie?
I belong to a group called Little Friends through the Archdiocese of Detroit,
Mm-hmm.
and it's well attended in this area and all throughout the Archdiocese. Our newsletter goes out, and we can attend from here. We can attend anything, a dance, a bowling activity, this lunch, breakfast, whatever, any place that would be within there. And we have a bi-monthly breakfast at Cyril's, and it's open, totally open, and it's not a Catholic organization. It's a Catholic supported organization. There are a number of people who come there who also attend Wings. So, and a couple of the members are very vocal about saying, Wings is getting together tomorrow up at the Dorsey House or wherever, and you're all invited if you want to come. So that publicity is getting out to
And it definitely needs, the bereavement groups definitely need to be in the paper, but also I need to do my part too, because it's not just bereavement. I need to have, hey, we need volunteer ads in there 24/7, 365, I need to get those in there too. You got to see those in there as well. And I definitely need to improve that. I want to make one point, try to move a little, we got about 15 minutes to lunch, so move a little bit faster. Just on this is probably one of the only columns that we can't reduce. This is the no skilled need. So these are patients that may not qualify. But just to restate, I think that this, and even as Laura said, this can all go down. Maybe these are the only ones that you can't reduce. So if we add all those up, there's a lot of potential patients there. It's a two-way street, as I mentioned, the doctor, the patient, and the family, and we can connect with both of them. I looked at a little research that said Doctors don't refer to hospice because of the terminality aspect. You know, doctors want to prolong life and everything, and the fear of losing contact with the patient. So the doctor is hesitant to refer to hospice because they think that the patient, that they can't follow the patient, that they're going to kind of high five and see him later, and that they're never going to follow them. So this article that I found said that these are the two main reasons that doctors are hesitant to refer to hospice. They're scared to discuss the terminality, and they are afraid of losing contact with their patients. But we know that that's not true, okay? It's not a death sentence. We don't have to be scared of terminality. We make life better in those last 6 months. And also, doctors are encouraged to follow their patients. We know this as people that work with hospice. So these are some kind of key message points that you could have if talking with your doctor, or if talking with your neighbor to have them talk with their doctor, is hospice encourages that the doctor follows. So we can overcome these barriers by just educating and encouraging patients to speak to their doctors about hospice sooner. And as Laura's already mentioned, that could help that one bar on that other chart. So here's our little guys, Jack and Dolly. Hey doc, have you heard about hospice? And that's this middle column on your diaries that are laying on your tables. Knowing the truth, so segues into, we know a lot of the truths about hospice. We have to communicate them better to our neighbors and our physicians and also community groups. This guy represents a caregiver or someone in the community. So fear of separation, leaving home, and loss of control. These are some things that hospice patients are afraid of. They are afraid that they're going to be separated from their loved one, or their loved one's afraid that their mom's going to be separated from them. They're afraid that they have to leave home. They're afraid that they're going to lose control. These are, according to the American Journal of Hospice and Palliative Medicine, 3 of the main reasons that people are scared. But we know most of the truth. That according to the same numbers that I pulled, the overwhelming majority of our patients remain in their own home. So these numbers don't lie. This is patient's home or residence. This is skilled nursing facility. This is nursing long-term care, inpatient, home care, and assisted living facility. Again, patient's home or residence. So we know that patients can stay in their home. So back to this slide. Fear of leaving home. We got to negate that fear. It's not a lie. It's a total myth. Like, it's totally backwards. So this is even true with the hospice patients. That was all of our agency patients. You know, these are our hospice. So obviously our hospice patients have folks down here, down here, down here, and down here at these nursing facilities. And then these are our hospice patients that remain in the home. So to show that more clearly, that it's still even a majority of hospice patients, I have this pie chart where this red is patients in their home or residence for hospice. It's still the majority. These are all your nursing facilities together. And this is in-home. I believe that indicates the hospice home. But it's still over 50% of our patients remain in their home. So to go to these, leaving home, no, it's not the case. And even in this case, this is not necessarily meant that they left home to the nursing facility. They may have lived at the nursing facility. So rarely do people have to change location. They maintain 100% control, and most of the time, they can remain in their own home. So we know these truths. These are some of the message points that we can convey to our friends, our physicians, and family members. Patients and families remain together throughout care, and the majority of our patients remain in their home. And as always, patients maintain control of decision making and their entire plan of care. So we need to overcome these 3 main reasons that individuals may refuse hospice care. So this is a group setting where we could go to a group, pretty efficient. You got 6 or 7 folks, and you say, these are the key message points, and these are the truths about hospice. And so that's what I did on Tuesday, and it's the 3rd column of your diaries, and you could do that, or you could ask us to do that. Whereas word of mouth is usually you connect with your neighbor, or you to physician, or you to neighbor to physician. You could do groups if Julie wanted to do her group and have a special education session. She could do it, or you could all ask us to do it. Like I said, I did one on Tuesday, and I had a whole lot of fun. Although that's something that the marketing team is even better at. They have better answers to the questions that are asked by the community groups. So if you want us to present to a community, your church, your card group, or any group that you know, please ask, and we'll do that. Go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to say, we already launched the hospice home marketing campaign, and you can so if any of you guys have specific belong to NOLA groups, I've talked to churches, I've talked to fire postal worker groups, pledge groups, any groups you guys are a part of or know of, you will have us come in and talk to them.
So we have what's next. Remember, when I started this off, I said, last time we met, we had a lot of great ideas. This time we met, we have a lot of great ideas. What's next? We talked about word of mouth. We talked about overcoming fear, you to doctor, you to friend to doctor, whatever, and knowing the truth through community groups. And Laura says we're totally open. What we have to do is we have to measure these and see if they work. So what I put on your tables are contribution diaries. It's very simple. It's just a line that says, who did you talk to or who you want to talk to? I think there's a date line, and also is it person to physician, or person to group. It can either be things that you did recently or next week or this month, or that you want us to do in the case of groups. If you have a group that you want us to talk to, you'll be writing that down and check that column. So I printed out 40, but I can print out 400, of course in black and white. And I want you to take these after today, complete them, return them as you return pink sheets. This is our special push for this month. I'll have them all back by the end of April, and then I'll record them all on the computer, we'll measure them, and then probably by our annual volunteer luncheon, I'll have the same numbers from this presentation to compare to the subsequent months of April, May, June, and then when we have our dinner in July, let's see if we really effectively hit these numbers and made them go down, and we will be able to measure how many people you reached with your volunteer diaries. So again, I can print you as many copies of those as you want. They're very simple. Name, what type of contact it was of the 3 types that we talked about today. Fill them out. If you need more copies, I'll make them, return them, I'll record them. Then we'll party in June or July. What do you think? Did you have one thing? Yeah. No? You're just rubbing your belly, ready for the pizza?
And does our hospice home accept clients from other hospices?
Like a transfer? Sure. Yeah. We're the best, right? So when they hear about us, they would want to
So
come.
like if they're with Mercy Hospice and they need a place to go, we do accept them.
Yeah, we would accept anybody that's hospice
And then whose
appropriate.
care are they under?
Our hospice.
They have to go to water hospice at that point.
Yeah, but they can stay wherever they're at within our service area.
If they go to
No,
the
she's
home.
talking
If they go to
about
the
the
home,
home
they're
itself.
Blue Water Hospice.
Oh, yeah. If they come to the Blue Water Hospice home, they would be under our care. We cannot, and correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, but we cannot house a McLaren hospice patient at the hospice home.
No, but we have looked into, they're not gone down, so that setting up contracts with other traditional hospital providers, so once he has a community hospice program, Susan has a community hospice program where they've had patients like care, that patient needed inpatient level of care, that there would be some percentage of reimbursement that would go from to the hospital. But we have taken
45 minutes to say anything. But then I said, you know, you say we need more communication, but how are we going to do it? What's the plan? What's the plan, Stan? And then we're coming up with better plans so that we can move and act on these ideas. One of the ways I'm trying to improve communication in the agency, you know I'm a techie guy, and so I'm trying to boost email use, and for everyone who has a little tablet, like this is my little tablet, my cell phone, and all of our staff members have one of these. Theirs is bigger, and it has email on it. So I'm trying to educate the staff on how to use email, how to better communicate technologically, because that's what I know. I'm streaming the web presentation because that's what I know how to do. And so the message from leadership is we have communication as one of the things that we need to do better and improve on. I'm doing my job with what I know. And so everybody else has to do their job and be accountable and communicate better with how they know how to communicate, whether that's phone or face-to-face or however. I don't know. However you think communication is good, you should just do that a little bit better. And that goes for, of course, the volunteers with me, the volunteers with patients, the volunteers with other volunteers, and the volunteers with staff, staff to staff, staff to family, staff to patient, staff to doctor, patient, all of these nodes on the network of communication need to get better. So it's not just that we're going to be emailing more, but we're going to be maybe phone calls more, mailing more, and also having group meetings. You know, the frequency of the group meetings has already increased. We had one last month, we had one this month. I'm going to plan one for next month, hopefully. The subject matter, if we don't get to it, I'll let you know, is we're going to talk about special teams of the volunteers. One of the special teams would be a bedside vigil team. And so once we iron out the process and who's on that special team, all right, we'll get started now. Good time. It's 6 after. And the only reason that I'm starting and interrupting your wonderful conversations is because we're streaming this one live on the internet. And so I let everyone know at 11 it would be streaming on the internet. And if you don't believe me, you can go out and there's a TV in the lobby. And it's already on the TV in the lobby. And so any of our volunteers or even staff members who might be interested in this presentation, they can be watching it right now. Maybe they're watching upstairs at their desk. And it also, yeah, you should wave. And then it also records. And so for anyone that can't live stream it, they can always go back. Even you can go back and watch it again if you want. This is a pretty good presentation, I think. The subject matter is good. It is a response to our prior meeting from March. You might recall if how many attended the March meeting? So about 80–90% of you. So that was more of a downer meeting, you know. We did lose our leader, and we had to convey that information, communicate it. You know, we're trying to communicate better. And we also had to come up with sort of rebound from having lost our leader. And so we had some good ideas at that meeting. Can anyone remind me what some of the good ideas were? More communication.
Number one.
Very good. So that was a great idea that then I went to my next leadership meeting and, you know, they said, again, we need to communicate more. We need to communicate more. We need to, and I sit there and I listen to everybody and I was very patient. I waited maybe a half an hour.
Yeah, I just don't want to do yeah, so somewhere.
Jesus, what I'd say, it might be the same.
I wonder. Yeah, it's like it's right here. Going to a store and
Oh, this is better.
no, I like
So you go and visit them?
I mean, I
Oh, she is.
I thought you
I haven't talked to her.
Yeah, I saw her.
We'll cover that. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm telling everybody I want to.
Yeah, please do.
Well, just take it up.
After a while.
Yeah, I know. I know.
You don't expect it to happen.
You're right.
Christine and I are starting on Sunday.
See my new pointer?
Need a pointer? No, thank you. Wow, it's a green one.
Yeah, something else.
Yeah.
I'm going to Sunday. Next Sunday, I'm going. Next Sunday, next Sunday. It's okay. Because I live right out there. I'll be there. Yeah. No, in fact, I don't realize it. She's still working. I know you do. I said, she was glad that she had someone that was coming in that she knew to be. Stays with her. Yeah. Did you never see this? What do you rather do that? They go to church on Sunday. She's got just I can go to mass on Saturday night.
Well, I do the choir, choir, all three masses. Oh, yeah. So it doesn't matter if I'm I was usually leery of it. I said,